a tragic character death can make a story a lot more powerful, but in tabletop RPGs, it may also create some issues with the player. So my question to you is, how do you feel about character death late in the campaign? Can characters always come back? Josiah, what do you think about that?
I'm gonna steal what I already know Fred's answer is and say it depends on the players. I asked them. No, but in all in all earnestness though, that's the truth. When you're late in a campaign, so much can happen, and it depends on the circumstance of that character's death and also like why, right? Like if that person dies in the final boss fight, it's like, okay, well obviously we're not gonna roll up new characters because the campaign is done now, so whatever. But if it happens very late in the campaign, but like say you still have a few sessions left, I think a lot of it can really depend on what the player wants, because you can say to them, all right, well, you died. Are you satisfied with this death? Are you satisfied with that being the end of this character's story? Whatever. And more importantly, do you want to roll up a new character to do the last like 3 or 4 sessions of this campaign? Or do you not want to do that because you've been playing as this character for like the past year or whatever, right? And if they're fine with it, then like whatever, just move on. If they're not, I think that giving your players an option to bring that character back is always good. Giving your like, don't just be like, oh, okay, you actually didn't die, like that didn't happen. I don't think retconning is ever a great idea, but I do think telling your players like, oh well, you know, you could bring them back if you can find a diamond, and you can let them do a little mission to do some research in town and be like, oh, okay, we've got a lead, then they can go to that place, try to get the diamond, whatever. And if you don't even want it to be like a big long dungeon delve to distract from the main campaign, that can just be an interesting NPC interaction, you know? Like maybe they go into town and one of the party's rivals finds out they're snooping around looking for a diamond, and that person comes to them in their hour of need and is like, hey, I have the thing you're looking for and I'll give it to you for free, but you're going to owe me a favor later. And I mean, that can have implications towards the end of the campaign, or maybe that's your jumping off point for the campaign you do after this one, you know? Like you can always find a way to do something with that. So I think, yeah, it largely depends on what the deceased player character's player wants to do. And there's if they want to come back, there's always a creative way that you can do that, with varying lengths of effort depending on what kind of game you're running, right?
Yeah, so that really depends on the player and the situation, but sometimes a death is a good end and a very good thing for the story.
Definitely. And I think sometimes you will have a player who their character dies and you ask them and they go, you know what? No, I'm satisfied with that ending for that character. I'm going to roll up someone else. Or in the case of a long running campaign, maybe there's even an NPC that the party's like kind of close with and they just take over as that character and then move in. So it doesn't feel like, oh, we've been chasing this lich down for the past 2 years. And then like Jared joined us this week, I guess. So like whatever, you know, but like if there's an existing NPC that they maybe want to take over and step into that role, that's also an option that you can explore. But
very cool thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, the answer I think is just talk to your player and talk to your group and see what everyone else thinks is the most satisfactory.
Yeah, communication is key. AJ, what's your take on that?
Oh, I have so many takes on this because there's so many options. Right from the very beginning of D&D, one of the famous characters was basically a carbon copy of the other character who was so-and-so's cousin, and they forgot who the original character was. It was just like the cousin character became the main character of the campaign. So that option has always been like somebody steps in who's a carbon copy of my last character. But again, that takes away some of the impact of a death in the game. But there's good and there's bad ways for characters to go out in the game. A simple sort of throwaway fight that's not a boss battle and your dice just absolutely want to murder your character, and you're the sort of DM who just doesn't nerf or fudge the dice at all, and you're rolling openly in front of the players, and it just, that kind of sucks, like, because it's a letdown and it doesn't really fulfill the character's potential. There's other options though, like there's a very simple magical item called a ring of mind shielding, I think it is. It's an uncommon magical item, so it's quite accessible from the early steps of the game. And it has a basic benefit of stopping people from scrying in your thoughts and things like that. But it has a very interesting property, which is you have the option of your character's soul going into that ring on their death and staying there as part of that magical item. Instead of passing on to the afterlife. So there's an option that you could have an NPC come in and be informed by that pre-existing character and it guide that NPC. So you're carrying on the legacy of that character through a magical item now, which is in all sorts of possibilities. And that character can be interactive until you attain that diamond and bring them back. So you could have an option right at the start when you're establishing a session 0. You can offer, well, do you guys want to make up some characters which I will have as NPCs who are around your characters in the background, sort of support characters and stuff, but with the option that if your main character dies, you take up the role of the NPC that you have personally designed yourself. So you give me the background for them and you tell me how they fit into the game world, and I will craft the game world to incorporate that. So if you're a monk, you're part of a monk order or a religious order if you're a cleric, or perhaps some sort of a cult or a following if you're a warlock. All sorts of possibilities there that, again, gives them that interactive input into the game because it's a cooperative experience. You're not just handing a story to them fait accompli. They're supposed to be laying down the tracks on the railroad with you as you go.
Yeah, and then you get also extra characters just handed to you.
Yep, exactly. And if it's a really big, important battle, maybe they can step in and be playing 2 characters at the same time. And so it gives you that extra flexibility in that game to make even more epic stuff go on. And they've got the option also of like, well, I'm not really that happy with this still living character. I'm going to switch over to my NPC character for a little while and see how they go. So you've got that flexibility and option. And also sometimes players just get sick and tired of their character. It's just not working for them. And instead of disrupting the campaign by them suiciding their character in the game and dragging all the other heroic characters down with them, because they'll quite often try and save that character who's marching and towards a dragon and insulting it and stuff. It's okay to just say, look, your character retires from the game. He just decides he's got enough money. He goes off somewhere else. And your new character comes in and she wants to, she knows this character and this character because it's established in the lore that you've given me. So there's loads of different options that enhance the game rather than disappoint, take away from the character's experience or from the player's experience.
That's excellent. And yeah, returning characters should be something that people are more comfortable with. You don't have to continue playing that character just because you made it at the beginning of the campaign. Definitely agree there. Fred, what do you think about character death?
God, are you sure you want to ask that question, considering how many times I've talked about character death in videos? Look, seriously, my perspective and view and feelings around character death doesn't really matter what stage of the campaign it is, whether it's the early stage or the later stages. I just don't really care at all. I really don't care at all. And I think for a lot of people, they might sort of don't understand where I'm coming from. But because I have alleviated the biggest stress and one of the biggest questions on YouTube that people ask YouTube dungeon masters the answers to, which is I remove it from my decision-making process. Okay, so I don't have a part and parcel in that. I leave that in the player's hands. But I also couldn't give a toss how people deal with character death in somebody else's game, because it's not my table. So for me, I'm always letting my players make that choice. Okay, so if they can't bring the character back and they need my help, then I'll help them. I've said this before. I'm fine with that. That's all good. I think the thing with character death at later stages in the campaign, since it really has no impact on me whatsoever, is it's more likely to have an impact on the players than on me personally as the dungeon master. I think that there are some people who, when they lose their character and in the late stages of the campaign, they might find that's quite impactful. And I've seen people at my table who have seen a character that's been around a long time and they were quite shocked that the character died. But it's not really something that impacts me. And I also want to point out that, guess what? Getting a character to come back to life if they decide they don't want to roll up a new character or build a new character. And often I find when you give people the choice, they do make a new character rather than come back into the game. Is okay, hang on. We've got Revivify. There's Raise Dead. Okay, all right, sure. Okay, they've lost their head, their arm, but we've still got a finger because we cut it off as we were running away from the dragon to make sure we could use Reincarnate, because frankly, we like Reincarnate more because then we can mess with their race.
This necklace of fingers? No, that's not creepy at all. These are my friends.
Just in case we lose one of them. Well, that's why everybody's lost a finger.
Yeah. Before we go on this adventure, everybody has to give me one of their fingers. It's like, what?
It's protocol. I'm sorry, nothing can be done about it.
It's insurance. It's like, okay.
So here's a question. Could you then sever a finger and then use restoration to grow it back, but like you still have the finger? So then it's like you're not even down a finger. You just, you still have to go through the experience of cutting your finger off. That's a great idea.
It's an ethical alternative to veganism. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you just have like a jar of pickled fingers. Like, who's that? Oh, these are our life insurance policies.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was just a counterpoint to Fred's comment about not caring about a character death. It doesn't affect the DM. As somebody who crafts the campaign around the characters, sometimes you have a big arc which is really tied in with that character, and it's a huge disappointment to use as a dungeon master when that character dies. You lose just as much as they do. It's like, oh man, I really wanted to unveil the storyline that your heritage is tied to this dragon that you're fighting, and you're actually a distant relative, a descendant of this dragon. We'll never get to learn that, and so it's like, oh, I wanted to tell that story.
Yeah.
Also, another point is that the character never has to come back to life. That's a very important thing. If the player doesn't want that character to come back, there's no way. It's written into the game that you can force that character to come back to life. The player always has the choice, because their character's soul is in the afterlife. They're perfectly fine. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm having fun in Elysium. Thank you very much.
Yeah, why would you come back?
Yeah. For anybody who's watched the new He-Man cartoon, don't at me. If you don't like it, I personally think it's absolutely fantastic. It's the best representation of D&D style adventures with the outer planes and all that sort of stuff that I've ever seen. So I'm just going to leave that out there.
I haven't seen it, but I really want to now.
I've watched the first couple episodes. It's cool. It's I like it so far, but I haven't finished it yet, so I can't really say anything about it. Anyway,
Aviad, what do you think?
Oh,
what do you think about it?
Yeah, you almost skipped yourself.
So personally, I think that if a point is dramatic enough, permanent death is a real viable option. Like a couple of you said, if the death is just random, encounter and it just happens, then for those encounters you have Revivify and you have Raise Dead and all of that. But sometimes when the condition is right, when when a character meets the villain of their backstory, and that final encounter, if that evil mage casts Disintegrate on them or another member of the party and they happen to die, that's a good place to have that death. But that's something that I always discuss about on session 0. So the players know that it's a possibility when they build the characters, that at some point during the campaign, that is truly something that's possible. So I'm always for if they want to come back, we can find a way. There's always true resurrection and things like that, but they'd have to work for it. Generally, though, most of my players agree that it's better for the rest of the table, for the rest of the players and characters to kind of bond over the experience. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of parties of characters that kind of take that and create a beautiful story from that. And they keep mentioning the same character over and over again. And it's such an amazing tribute for that player throughout the campaign. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I
One of the
remember
best-
more character deaths and character lives. That's
Definitely.
Mm.
And or should I say definitely? But one of the best parts about that
Yeah,
is when they're all
that joke counter one. Sorry.
yeah, put it on the screen. One of the funny things about that too is you're right, it often brings those characters together and like, oh man, like our friend died, whatever, and that can be like an intense bonding experience. But there's this weird like paradigm where the player rolls up their new character and that character comes in and from like an in-world perspective didn't know that other character, so like, oh, why are you guys always talking about this dead guy? But from an out-of-game perspective, they know that character better than anyone else did. One of my favorite moments was when we were doing the Tall Tales, that was the like woodland creature Redwall campaign. My friend Eric's character dies in like the second episode, and he comes back as a new character in episode 3, and they're having this funeral for him, whatever, and he starts roasting his old dead character, and he's like, man, from everything I knew about this guy, he was just like a drunk, he sucked, like, why are you guys talking about him like he was hot shit? Because he was a drunken master monk, like street urchin kind of character. So, and he came back in as this like noble paladin character and started like shit talking his dead character, and the rest of the party got mad at him for saying mean things about the character that he played and died in the previous episode.
I love it.
It was so funny. It was pretty funny, and we had a good laugh about that after the episode was over. He was like, yeah, I had a really good time smack talking the dead character.
That's so cathartic to do that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man, I envy
Yeah.
him.
And like when they told him the circumstances of his death, he was like, man, that guy sounds like an idiot. Why would he run into that room? It's like, yeah.
You just encounter a few people and they're grieving and you just talk shit about their deceased
Absolutely.
friend.
It was
Yeah.
it was at his funeral, no less. It was pretty funny. It was a good moment. But yeah, so there's lots of room for that like weird paradigm for sure when you have a character death.
Man, I've been running characters for I've been running session zeros since the 80s. It's not a new thing for me. It's just part and parcel. Back in the day, we used to just call it a character rolling up session. Where everybody rolls up their characters together and we plan and organize the party and stuff around that. And as the dungeon master, I'm sitting there going, well, do you want this to be a city campaign or do you want like Underdark stuff? It's like, oh, I've got a character that blah. And so it all ties together that way. I think it's very important. These days, it's kind of tricky because a lot of people are gaming on Zoom sessions and Roll20 and things like that. So they don't really have that opportunity to sit around at a table and roll up their characters together. It's all done with character generators and things like that. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying session zeros have sort of become a thing, but they were always really a thing. Yeah.
That's it's
and when you're rolling up your character, think about how the best way for that character to die.
Yeah.
That's definitely
That's actually
managing expectations is something we do for many years. For many groups, it's just they figure it out over time what this is all about. But I think that with more people talking about session zero is like stretching the importance of understanding the situation and communicate everything.
Yeah. It's developed and taken on a bigger role, which I think is good.
Yeah, I agree.
I have a little story very quick. So I'm running the Rise of Tiamat, level 14. This is the level the characters are. They are in the middle of a pitched battle, big, huge scale battle between the Cult of the Dragon and the forces of Sword Coast. And they've got to try to get to Tiamat's temple, stop her coming through. And so one of my players decides that guess what? I know we've run through all your little scenarios, Fred, the battle's going. I'm going to walk with my monk, who's level 14, which I think you can't kill, into no man's land. And I sat there as he's sort of taunting and doing his thing. And I was like, seriously? And everybody's like, are you out of your tree? Fred will roast you. And he said, he can't kill my character. So I sent 9, because you can get 9 things around, but they're large. But I sent adult dragons because I wasn't going to muck around. So I sent 9 of them. And I had all of them breathe fire on him. Did no damage. Did that multiple times. The only way I was able to take out that monk, that sodding monk, you can't even drop them on their head, okay, because of the way that they take damage. I had to use claws and biting to finally take him down. It took me rounds and rounds. And at the end of this, I said, okay, your character's dead. And the others are like, oh, what do we do? Can we go and get the body? I said, yeah, sure. And the guy sits there and he said, okay, all right, you killed my character. So do you want to play the same character? And he said, no, I'm going to make a new character. It's going to be his brother. And he's going to come back and try to get him, bring him back to life later on. And I'm like, really? And he said, yes, I just wanted to see if you could do it. Because frankly, I wasn't sure you could kill my monk. And the rest of them like, oh my God. So, all right. So
he could have done that. He could have done that out of game. Like, just like, let's do a little experiment to see whether you can kill my character. It's like, okay. Yeah.
And
instead of dragging everybody through that.
And it's also an awkward situation, right? So because if you actually bring a character, so you can bring another character back to life, then and it takes a while. So you've been playing this new character for a few sessions now. You kind of talk with the other characters, you grew attached to it, and then you bring the older character back to life, and it's like, well then, bye.
Yeah, because there's people who play campaigns for years, like the same campaign for years, and they have multiple characters over that time, and that's just part and parcel of what they do. Characters can be built around that legacy of wanting to save characters, or they can be the son of a character that you had previously, legacy characters and legacy magic items. Legacy magic items were a big part of the later stage of 3.5, where they had items which grew with the experience of your character, for instance. Those were great.
And that's it for this video. Thank you everyone for joining us and for this lovely chat. Again, let's go around and everyone tell us where we can find you and on the internets. So Fred, tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook under How to D&D. You probably might find me under Frederick Wheeler on Twitter. I don't know how it sort of lists me, but yeah, those are the places.
Awesome. Josiah, back to you.
Yeah, if you search Dungeon Dad on YouTube, you'll find me. I'm also on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit.
Awesome. And AJ, where can we find you again?
Yep, you can find me on YouTube. Just type in AJ Pickett and you'll find all of my content. You can also find me on Facebook if anybody still uses it. I admin a bunch of groups that are all started with Sages of, and then the specific world setting. So Sages of Forgotten Realms is one of our biggest ones. We do Eberron, Birthright, all sorts of different stuff, and they're really good communities that focus on the lore of the game. So if you want to learn about it without all the politics and that sort of stuff, we basically stick to the scholarship.
Oh, a lot of good things in there. So thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, remember that you are awesome, keep being awesome, and we'll see you beyond the screen. Bye.